Hello, everyone, and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 989, 989, Tuesday, December 17th, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so we have a lot of news to get to today as usual, so let's go ahead and get started right here. Well, I guess if most of you have heard by now, it looks like the demo commies have come up with a charge of wire fraud. Why? Because I mean, prior to yesterday, all they had with these two sort of nebulous terms, contempt of Congress and obstruction. There was no real crime, and I guess sometime over the weekend, someone said, "Hey, this thing's getting ready to go to the Senate. You better put in a crime. You need a high crime or misdemeanor." You got to actually name a crime or a high crime or misdemeanor. And of course, learning of this, they said, well, what can we go with? Well, the bribery thing didn't work out too well. The fraud, that didn't work out. Quid pro quo, couldn't do that. What have we got? Well, he was on the telephone, wasn't he? Yeah, hey, let's call it wire fraud. Let's call it wire fraud. Man, oh man. Not a single time during any of the hearings up until now have they even debated the issue of wire fraud. They just stuck it in there. Oh my God. It's hard to believe that this is actually happening. It really is. So I have no idea. I have no idea who's advising the demo commies, but this is something we've never seen before. It would actually be funny if it weren't so serious. It's like almost like a spoof of a political. It's kind of like a. I don't know. It's kind of like the Wag the Dog movie or something. It's it's not real. This is not. I mean, this could never be taken seriously or anything like that. If you were actually dealing in, I mean, if you were trying to do like a serious movie or book, you couldn't write this in the script or put this in the book. It would be laughable, which is why this could only be like some sort of a lampoon or a spoof or a comedy or Saturday Night Live open skit or something. I mean, this is all this could possibly be, and how embarrassing and how damaging this has been. I mean, this is obviously. I mean, I didn't know that Trump derangement syndrome was this bad. That it actually seems to have had the effect of it actually seems to be eating away at the brain matter of people who are afflicted with this disease. And now I'm convinced that I would say that before Trump leaves office, they will come up with a medical term to actually describe what has happened to people with this, what we call Trump derangement syndrome. I expect there'll be scientific experiments. They'll study brains of people who have it. They'll probably find that there is some sort of a loss of brain matter. They'll find something. This has gone beyond even what we're just talking about, it being comedy or something. This has to be something more serious. These people are actually sick. They're actually sick. They need help, and all we can do is put up with them for another year until we can take them out of power. You would think that they would have just looked at what happened in the UK with the Liberals in UK, and there's quite a few different liberal parties there. Obviously, Labour and the Lib Dems and the Green Party, they're all liberal. But I think for the most part, most people here in the States, we look at the Labour Party as being, pretty much like the pretty extreme left of the Democratic Party here in the States, and seeing what happened there and the rejection of that and the propaganda and all that goes along with it, the same as we have here, you would think that they might have learned something from that, but I don't think they have. I don't think they're capable of learning. I think that they hate Trump so much that they just like a bull who sees red. And even though, if you've ever been to a bullfight, even though it should become apparent at some point to the bull that he is losing, every time he gets another sword rammed through his rib cage, he just can't stop himself from charging the matador again, only to get another sword through the rib cage until finally he dies of 1,000 cuts. This is what I see taking place here, and it is going to be like a bullfight, a bloodbath. And by the way, as I was there at the bullfight, they were cheering for the bull. By the way, many people cheering for the bull. Okay, so we have a town hall yesterday citing a poll that shows 53% of people believe the FBI broke the law investigating Trump, and that number breaks down, that 53% breaks down into 22%, that's 22% extremely likely that the FBI broke the law, 14% very likely that the FBI broke the law, 17% somewhat likely that the FBI broke the law. Now, those numbers certainly means that it's crossing into Democratic territory. If Trump only has 43% approval, according to the national polls, that's what we're told. I believe the number's higher than that, but if we take that number, that means that there's 10% of people, and this would obviously include independents and Democrats, who also believe that. And that would mean to get that kind of a number, you would also need a certain amount of the minority population believing that as well. So those are two critical polls which tell us a lot, because the Horowitz report, I would say not many people read it. I would say probably not many people watched the hearings. All they've gotten is the media spin, which we know has been 99% against Trump and against what the real findings should be. But despite all the media efforts and all the propaganda and all that's been done, whether it was, remember, this has been going on for 2.5 years, whether it's through the Mueller witch hunt, whether it was through the Schiff Inquisition, or where we are now, throughout all that, and the overwhelming amount of media indoctrination, they are still in the minority. The majority of people believe that the FBI broke the law investigating Trump, and that is without even the real truth coming out. Durham is going to give the real truth. Now, I don't necessarily expect that Durham's going to have a press conference, because he's not known for doing that. He's just going to start indicting people. But eventually, I think the DOJ, the Department of Justice, will put out certainly some sort of a report, and it will probably obviously will use Durham's investigation. But I don't necessarily think that Durham will come out and make a statement. He's just not known for doing that. But we also have a couple other polls. We have a Quinnipiac poll that came out yesterday that shows 73% of people who were polled say the economy is good or great. 73% that the economy is good or great. I cannot remember the last time I heard a number on the economy that high. And usually, if you have in fact, in almost every case, if you have a president with a good economy and we're not in an unpopular war, he gets reelected almost every time. So in the same poll, you have 79% are optimistic about their financial future. That number right there is the knockout punch. If 79% of the people go to the polls and they feel good about their personal economy, their job, their finances, their savings, their investments, what have you, they're going to vote for the guy that's president, regardless, right? So there you go, 79% optimistic about their financial future. And of course, we had 4 polls over the course of about a week and a half that showed somewhere in the range of 30%. I think the lowest one I saw was 31. The highest one around 34% of blacks support Trump. If this number holds out, if Trump gets 34% of the black vote, or even 30%, 31%, that will be the most votes that a Republican president has gotten since probably, I don't know how far back you'd have to go to find a Republican getting numbers that high, but it would have to predate the civil rights era. It would have to be, prior to even maybe World War II. I mean, not in my lifetime can I ever remember Republicans ever getting that. And if Trump gets 31% of blacks, not only will he win the election, but Republicans will, well, let's put it this way, Democrats will not be able to win a general election. The Democrats cannot win a general election if 31% of blacks vote for Republicans. I mean, it's not really possible. So, because Democrats made the decision to give up the white, middle-class, blue-collar vote to get the minority vote. So if they gave up the blue-collar, middle-class, white vote to get the minority vote, but in reality, they lose both. They simply cannot win a general election in the Electoral College. Just simply the numbers aren't there. That is how disastrous this is for the Democratic Party. Well, we did get some bad news yesterday, unfortunately, but it's only bad news for now. Judge Emmett Sullivan has rejected Sidney Powell's request to get that Brady material, and he has set a sentencing date for January the 28th. Michael Flynn is eventually going to be pardoned. I think that eventually all of the people who were charged under the Mueller witch hunt are going to be exonerated, cleared, the records cleared, and everything else. And I think that probably most of those guys will be filing large civil suits against the government. Certainly Flynn, certainly Carter Page. I would think Papadopoulos would go in that as well, and maybe even Stone and Caputo. So I think that when this thing finally wraps up and Durham has slapped the handcuffs on dozens and dozens of the perpetrators who committed the criminal conspiracy, I believe at that point Trump will issue complete pardons, acquittals all the way across the board. And then, of course, I expect that there will be civil lawsuits. I think Carter Page is already working on his, Papadopoulos as well. Of course, Flynn will have to get past where he's at now. But I would suspect that Flynn will get little if no jail time. I believe after he is sentenced, whatever that may be, I think he'll write a book and probably sell a lot of copies and hopefully make a lot of money. And I think the next thing he'll be doing is filing a lawsuit against the government. And then by that time, I expect we'll be getting into late spring, early summer. According to Attorney General Barr, that's about when he expects Durham to finish his work. And, of course, that will result in and culminate in, of course, the arrest of dozens of the criminal conspirators. And how do we know that? Well, because Barr and Durham told us. The IG report came out, and the whole issue, there's really three issues. The predication of was the opening of the investigation properly predicated? We know that Horowitz seems to believe it was, but immediately after releasing the report, both Durham and Barr came out and said, no, we don't think it was properly predicated, and Durham would know, and he would never have come out and made that statement unless he already had that proof and knew it. If he wasn't sure of it, he would never have made the statement. But he did make the statement, which tells us Durham's already discovered the evidence and is in possession of the evidence that it was improperly predicated. That is where the crime begins. Everything that happened after that now becomes a crime, which would be the second point, which is the fact that once they knew and talked to the subsource for Christopher Steele that it was all bullshit, everything that happened after January 2017 would now be a crime. And, of course, we know that Durham is looking at the prior to the opening of the investigation, Crossfire Hurricane, July 31st, 2016. Everything that happened before that will now become criminal. Everything was criminal. And Durham knows that the predication was not legal, and he told us that. On the day of the IG report was released, he said, nope, I beg to differ. I disagree with the IG on the predication. That means Durham has the evidence that it wasn't properly predicated. And that takes care of everything from the time the investigation opened, July 31st, 2016, up until the next point, which is January 2017, when they learn and they know for sure that the Steele dossier and all the other stuff around it is all bullshit. Everything that happened from that point forward becomes a crime. And then, of course, once Durham determines that everything that occurred, this is automatic. Anything that occurred before, any of the spying or any of that kind of stuff that occurred before the official launch of the investigation is also a crime. Not to mention all the other people, all the players, private contractors, other civilians, people involved, the Rotten Reverend Clinton, her campaign, the law firm, foreign governments, foreign spies. All these people come into play, and that's what Durham is tying together right now. There will be dozens of people, high-level people, who will be charged with crimes in this criminal conspiracy. And that's what Durham told us. That's why we know. So, yes, Flynn will eventually be vindicated. It's a shame that he has to go through this. Now, I think it doesn't surprise me that the Brady material cannot be released, and I think that is a lot to do with the fact that John Durham is the guy that's holding that information. I mean, Sidney Powell was wanting the information on the phones that they got from Mifsud. She was wanting information on Mifsud personally, Stephen Halper, all these things that are all part of Durham's investigation. So I don't think that Sidney Powell or Judge Sullivan believed that they would ever be able to get this type of Brady information because of the ongoing investigation. And if Sidney Powell were to get that, she would essentially be the one to uncover what Durham knows now. And I guess maybe the judge has looked into that and has probably been told, well, and I think that that's why the DOJ in the first place got together with Sidney Powell and the judge and said, hey, let's postpone this till after the IG report, because a lot of what you want is in the IG report. So I think that their thinking was, okay, well, whatever Horowitz puts in the IG report, that's all you're probably going to be able to see. You know, there might be some of it redacted. You might be able to get some of it unredacted for the purpose of this, for the court hearing. But as far as this other Brady material, the stuff about Misfit, what's on the phones, all these sorts of things, Halper, these things are part of the ongoing investigation with Durham, and he is not going to release that type of information, even if it is in benefit of the Flynn case, which he probably understands it's a frame-up as well. But I guess Durham's position is just hold on, let this thing go forward. They're probably not going to sentence Flynn to very much. And the fact of the matter is, it actually is going to help Flynn in the end, because any more damage that he suffers from this point forward will only result in him getting a larger settlement. Because ultimately, Durham is going to vindicate Flynn and prove he was set up. Ultimately, Flynn is going to have a very large settlement with the government. So I kind of understand this. I don't like it, but I kind of understand it. And we just have to stay tuned and see what happens next. I don't expect the sentencing is going to be anything, severe or anything like that. I'd be surprised. Maybe he won't even go to jail. Papa Galapagos got 2 weeks. It's possible Flynn will not even get that. We'll have to see, because the DOJ knows. I mean, they know what they're dealing with here. I think they want to extricate themselves from this as quickly as they can, as cleanly as they can. So we'll have to see here in the next couple of weeks. January 28th is the sentencing date. And of course, Flynn did plead guilty. So you have to keep that in mind. Okay, so we're learning something else as well regarding the IG report, which is that the Department of Justice did not tell the FISA court that Steele's number one subsource, which we now know to be Sergei Milian, was himself under a counterintelligence investigation at the time that they used him, his work, to get the evidence for the FISA court, for the FISA application, the FISA warrant, on Carter Page. Oh my God. Oh my God. In addition to everything else, the fact that they know after the first renewal, from that point forward, they know from talking to the Steele's subsource that dossier is total bullshit, and they don't tell the FISA court that. Not only that, they don't tell the FISA court that the subsource himself was the target of a counterintelligence investigation at the time that they were applying for the warrant and the subsequent 3 renewals. Oh my God. Oh man, these guys are so screwed. Oh, that's unbelievable. Well, there was a good article in the American Thinker. I think 2 days ago I read it. Haven't had time to get to it, but I'll mention it now. So a good article in the American Thinker where they're talking about this super PAC that's very closely associated with Madam Botox, Nancy Pelosi, and there's another PAC that's kind of Harry Reid was associated with. And those 2 PACs, primarily the one for Nancy Pelosi, are making promises to give fairly substantial amounts of money to all these Democrats who are in these 31 Democrats who are in these districts where Trump won pretty handily to get them to go along with impeachment. And but there's a bigger story going on behind it, which is that apparently over the past 2 weeks or so, a lot of the members, particularly these 31 and other Democrats, coming to Pelosi and Steny Hoyer and saying, look, we're getting slammed back home. People are not supporting this. I don't think I can go along with it. On top of all that, we're not doing anything for the people. It's all impeachment all the time. We're not passing the trade deals, which a lot of people have been paying attention to. It's very important in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Very, very important, that trade deal, the USMCA. Not to mention a lot of people talking about the prescription drug reform, other things, policy-related things that are just not being done. So according to the story, Madam Botox was prepared to put off the USMCA forever. I mean, they do not want Trump to have a single win. They do not want to participate in anything whatsoever in order that would make it look like Trump is winning or keeping a campaign promise. But because of the pressure brought by these Democrats, Pelosi was forced to do two things that she caved on that she did not want to do. Number one, she was forced to go along with the USMCA, and she was forced to not fight Trump on the wall funding in the budget bill that they're getting ready to sign. The Democrats were going to hold out and not sign on to it because of the money Trump wanted for the wall. But because the impeachment is going so poorly, Democrat members are under so much pressure that they are saying, we cannot get caught up in this fight. And again, this border security issue in Michigan, in Wisconsin, all over the country, it's an issue that the average common sense voter agrees with Trump on, that we need to secure our borders. They don't want that fight right now. So Pelosi was forced to capitulate on both the giving Trump all the money he wants for his wall. They're not going to fight him on that. The budget's going to go through, and they're not going to fight that issue anymore. They've dropped it. And, of course, they're agreeing to sign on to the USMCA. It will likely be ratified and signed right after the first of the year, as soon as the impeachment's over. Not only that, but Madam Botox has tapped into her super PAC, or this super PAC that's closely associated and supported by Pelosi, and they're agreeing and telling all these 31 members and some others that if they'll vote for impeachment, that this super PAC is going to come in to save the day for them when it comes election time. They're going to come in with a boatload of money to help them keep their seats. And that's the type of techniques that Madam Botox is having to use in order to hold her members to the line to get them to vote for impeachment. She's having to give up a lot of things that she didn't want to give up to get these 31 members on board. And she's going to lose a few of them, but I guess coming in with the promises of all this money, signing the USMCA trade deal, and not fighting Trump on the border wall funding, this apparently has been enough to get the votes that she needs, and we're now being told she has the votes. But I'll be honest with you, I mean, this is not going to matter. I don't really think it's going to matter that much. I don't care how much money they give these people. The voters are not going to forget what they did, and it's not money only helps if you're talking about getting out a message. The more money you have, the more ability you have to get out the message and to get your candidate out there so they look like a top-tier candidate. That's not the issue. None of these 31 Democrats have an issue with identity, because they're already won their seats and have been serving in Congress. It's the fact that many of them promised they wouldn't buy into impeachment, that they were going to go work on issues. And it's the fact that all the voters in these places know that. No amount of money is going to change the reality on the ground. These voters already know who these people are, and especially now that they voted for this impeachment. That is what a lot of these voters, it's going to be the burning issue that's going to ride with them for the next 11 months. And on the first opportunity they get to walk into that voting booth and punish that member of Congress, they're going to do it, regardless of how much money they spend to try to spin a narrative. There's no way to spin out of this one. No matter how much money that you have, you promised that you were going to work on issues and not go along with impeachment. You lied. You signed on to impeachment. You were all in, and that's all people are going to remember. That's all that's going to be in their mind. At this point, they're not even going to look at any ads from these people. once they cast their vote to go ahead with impeachment, that's all these voters are going to remember, and they'll be looking forward to the opportunity in 11 months to go vote against these people who voted for this impeachment. So they may think that all this money and all these promises are somehow going to pay off, but it's BS. It's not going to pay off because it's not an issue of having enough money to get the voters to know who you are and get your name or your message out. That's not going to come into play. The only thing that's going to come into play is the fact that they went back on their word and they supported something that was not only horrible, grossly negligent, but was a bald-faced lie they told to the very voters just 3 years prior. So that's kind of how I see that playing out. So yes, Pelosi's doing everything she can do to try to get those people, and they're obviously, many of them, taking the bait, but it's not going to work out for them. They should have followed Jeff Van Drew, who still has not officially announced that he's leaving the Democratic Party, but yesterday 5 of his 6 staffers quit. So that tells us a lot. He's probably made it clear to them that he's going to switch parties. He's certainly going to vote no on impeachment. We know that. And, of course, we had more videos coming out from that town hall. I'm not sure what this woman's thinking. This Alyssa Slotkin, this Democrat, formerly worked for the CIA. She did this town hall. I guess she thought it would be a good idea to publicly come out and do a town hall and tell the voters at this town hall what her decision was on impeachment. She's going to vote for it because she's one of the people who was promised a lot of money and these other things. And I don't know if you saw any video clips of how that went for her, but it didn't go well. It did not go well. And as all this is going on, Trump's numbers are better than they've ever been. And as far as fundraising, he raised $10 million last week. He raised $10 million in the week that he was impeached, or that the impeachment hearings began, which are certain. It was never a question if they're going to impeach Trump. That's what they've been working on for 3 years. So now we have some information on Joseph Misfit. We're learning now from the Italian press that Misfit is now under investigation in Italy for embezzlement of 100,000 euros. That's about $110,000. He will be notified, according to the Italian government. They are going to notify him of this fact that he's under investigation for embezzlement as soon as they locate him. We also had this reporter in the UK, this Chris Blackburn. He's a reporter in the UK, and he has tweeted that he has a source at Sterling University who has told him that Misfit has been using his Sterling email account to arrange meetings with officials from Columbia's law school, and that the emails are explosive for the U.S. and the Department of Justice. Blackburn has seen some of these emails. Now, that's very interesting, and we have to assume that maybe Durham now has this information as well. And what's strange about this is that Columbia University, well, that's where Comey's good buddy, Mr. Richmond, Daniel Richmond, is a professor at Columbia. I wonder if there's some tie to Richmond, Comey, and Misfit. It's unclear at this point, but the connection's certainly there, and I guess if this reporter, Chris Blackburn, is tweeting this out, then it certainly must be common knowledge, at least within investigative circles, and if it wasn't before, it is now. Durham will certainly be looking into Misfit's Columbia or his Sterling University email account, because maybe that's how he's been communicating. And they'll learn a lot from that, and according to this reporter, it's very damaging. So the question is that we learned from the IG report that the FBI was not running Misfit. We know that the Russians were not running Misfit. So the question is, who was running Misfit? And it's been reported, I can't confirm this, it's just you hear people saying this happened. I don't know. I've not seen any hard evidence it has happened, that Durham has interviewed Misfit and Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. Now, I can expect that he has interviewed Downer. I'm pretty sure he probably has, but I'm not sure he's interviewed Misfit, but there are certain reports out there saying he has. That is the key to this whole thing. on the intelligence side, on the covert side, on the stuff that was going on prior to 2016, is all about Mifsud. And I'm sure that before Durham is done, he will cover all ends of this planet to finally get to Mifsud if he hasn't already. He will find him. Eventually, as this Italian investigation goes on, eventually Mifsud will become a fugitive. And once you're a fugitive, then Interpol kicks in. This international policing agency where it's a database where you have the entire world's police agencies looking for you. It will be very, very hard for Mifsud to stay underground much longer. Now, one final thing that's really important, and I had to go in and put this back in my timeline, going all the way back to January 19th of 2016. We have another excellent article from Lawrence Sellin, Sellin, and he is reporting that White House logs show that Eric Ciaramella, the fake whistleblower, chaired a meeting of FBI, Department of Justice, and Department of State officials on January 19th of 2016. They had two objectives. Number one, to coerce the Ukrainians to drop the Burisma probe, which involved Vice President Biden's son Hunter, and also to allow the FBI to take over the investigation. Their second objective was to reopen a closed 2014 FBI investigation that focused heavily on Paul Manafort, to ramp up the investigation into Manafort, which of course did happen and eventually led to this release of the Black Ledger. Of course, we know that Nellie Orr was involved in that, getting that information along with Isikoff from Yahoo News. Chalupa, of course, within a week of this date, if you go look at my timeline, and it's there now, January 19th, 2016 is when this first meeting happens with Ciaramella and all these people. Then 2 weeks later, he convenes a second meeting, and it's about that time that Chalupa makes her big breakout to the DNC, to the Clinton campaign, to Isikoff, to Fusion GPS, to Nellie Orr, to everyone, that she's now stumbled onto all this Manafort information. So you have to wonder if there's a tie somewhere between Chalupa and Ciaramella, or the group that was working on this effort to get Manafort entangled into this mess. So, as I just mentioned, 2 weeks after the original meeting, which would have been somewhere around the 1st, 2nd, 3rd of February, Ciaramella holds another meeting, which is a planning session to go ahead and reopen the investigation into Manafort. So, at this point, Manafort essentially becomes the vehicle by which the Obama deep state operatives could link Trump to nefarious activities, which involved Russians, which of course would lead to the Russian collusion hoax. At the same time, we have Nellie Orr, who was a conduit for the Black Ledger that was used to take down Manafort and place him in the crosshairs of Special Counsel Uncle Bob the Executioner Mueller. We also have, going on, Bruce Orr and Christopher Steele trying to get dirt on Manafort from Oleg Deripaska. But not just Steele and not just Orr, but as is reported in the timeline, and as I have talked about on videos before, the FBI even went to Deripaska at this time to try to get him to give up information on Trump. And he laughed at the FBI. When the FBI told him about the PP-Gate story, he laughed and said, "That's crazy. That's crazy. As far as Trump and Russians, the whole Trump-Russia thing you're trying to put together is crazy talk. No one's going to believe it." So Steele, Orr, and Deripaska were not successful. It appears at getting him, Steele, Orr, and the FBI were not successful at getting Deripaska to cooperate. Of course, Manafort, like Page and Papadopoulos, were nothing more than vehicles. Trump was the target. Papadopoulos, Page, and Manafort basically provided the FBI and whoever else, the intelligence community, whoever else, essentially they provided like a window for the deep state to look into Trump. So that's really how they functioned, and that's kind of the origins of all of this, and that's why Durham ultimately will find himself in Ukraine. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See ya. Bye.